I'd been driving for over a decade, and I knew the feeling of loneliness that came with the open road. A few weeks ago, I was on Interstate 80 and just looking for a quick fill-up at a small truck stop. It was getting late, and I felt tired. I thought I was lucky to find fuel at that hour. The night was dark. The truck stop's flickering neon sign was the only light. I pulled in, feeling a wave of relief. As I stepped out, cold air hit me. I filled my tank, but something felt off. Shadows crept around the edges of my vision. I saw some truckers sitting at a booth. They were whispering, heads bent together. I thought they were just talking about the weather or road conditions, but their faces were tense. I felt uneasy but didn't want to look paranoid. Instead, I tried to listen. Their words slipped away, but their glances were sharp as knives. I finished fueling and climbed into my truck. The engine rumbled to life, but my heart raced. Just a truck stop, right? I told myself it was the late hour and my fatigue. I shut the door and tried to relax, but unease lingered. Around midnight I heard something outside, maybe footsteps, maybe just the wind. I wasn't sure. The sound crawled down my spine. I looked out the window, but all I saw were shadows. My heart thumped hard. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But the sounds grew. It felt like something was lurking, waiting outside. I leaned against the steering wheel, taking deep breaths. Days passed, and I learned from other drivers that truckers had vanished along that route. My stomach dropped. Those same truckers were the ones whispering together just hours before. Was I imagining things? Maybe it was the fatigue, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to take a nap, but sleep wouldn't come. The hair on my neck stood up. I opened my eyes to see a shadow moving outside, but when I looked closer, it vanished. I kept asking myself if it was real. Was it stress messing with my head? Or was there something out there? Those disappearances haunted me. I finally decided to leave, but the feeling of something following me weighed heavy. Just before I turned onto the interstate, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw movement. It was gone before I could focus. I couldn't shake the anxiety. I just drove, gripping the wheel. The silence felt suffocating. I might never know what happened that night. All I could do was drive into the dark, not knowing what was truly behind me. As I cruised down the interstate, the weight of the night still clung to me. The glow of my dashboard lights set the only bright scene as the moon hung high. I thought I could shake the sense of dread, but every shadow felt alive, shifting just beyond the reach of my headlights. I pushed my foot on the accelerator. I needed to get far away from that truck stop. Calm down, I told myself, just keep driving and don't look back. But exhaustion crept in, dragging my eyelids down. I fought it, gripping the wheel tighter. After a couple of hours, I spotted a rest area ahead. It seemed deserted, a desolate oasis in the bleakness. I needed a break, so I pulled in and parked. The silence wrapped around me, heavy and unwelcoming. I stepped out, stretching my legs. The cold air bit at my skin, but I welcomed it. At least it felt real. I wandered to the bathroom. The fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing with a low hum. I washed my hands, splashing water on my face. As I looked in the mirror, a chill coursed through me. My reflection seemed off, ghostly. I shook my head to clear the fog. On my way back, I caught a glimpse of a truck parked at the far end of the lot. The cab was dark, but I felt a pull to it, an urge to know why it stood alone. I walked closer, my boots crunching on gravel. Something wasn't right about that truck. Then I saw it. A small note stuck underneath the windshield wiper. My heart raced. I pulled it free, my hands trembling. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. It read, "Get out while you can, it's coming for you." My throat went dry. I looked back toward my truck, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. Nothing, just emptiness. I felt exposed, like the world was watching me. I crumbled the note in my fist and rushed back to my cab, locking the door behind me. I stared at the fuel gauge, wishing it would show I had enough to get me somewhere safe. Instead, it was barely a quarter full. Panic sliced through me. I couldn't go back. What if it was still there? What if something was actually hunting me? Suddenly I heard a sound, a low growl rising from somewhere near the woods behind the rest area. I froze. My heart hammered. Was it an animal? Or something worse? It felt wrong. Like the woods were alive with malice. I turned the key in the ignition, praying the engine would start quickly. It sputtered at first, but then roared to life. I threw it in gear and tore out of the parking lot, tires screeching. As I sped down the dark highway, my heart still raced. I glanced at the rearview mirror, but all I could see were the curves of the road behind me. I couldn't shake what I'd read or the sound I'd heard. Then, just ahead, I spotted headlights approaching fast. I focused, unsure if it was another truck or something else. It swerved in and out of lanes, erratic. Is it following me? I muttered under my breath, gripping the wheel tighter, not daring to look back. As the vehicle got closer, I could see it was a dark truck, oddly similar to mine. My stomach dropped. That wasn't just a coincidence. I realized then that whatever it was still out there, and it felt like I was just getting started on this nightmare. I drove faster, my breath quickening as the headlights loomed closer. I had to outdrive it, whatever it was. But as I changed lanes, the other truck swerved right behind me. It was almost like it could read my mind, anticipating my every move. I glanced at my speedometer. I was pushing 90. It didn't seem to bother the driver of the dark truck. The way he veered off the road just to keep pace with me was terrifying. My heart raced as I heard the thundering roar of his engine echoing in my ears. Panic took over. Should I pull over? Try to confront him? Maybe he was just an ordinary driver caught up in his own story, but I felt different. The way he drove, it felt predatory. Suddenly he was alongside me. I stole a glance over and I caught sight of his face. The driver was wearing a dark cap pulled low, shadowing his features. But his eyes, they locked onto mine, and I felt a jolt of dread. He didn't smile. No, there was nothing human in that look. Something dark lurked in his expression. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted, like prey on the open road. Just keep driving, I whispered to myself. You can outrun him. But then he lifted a hand, pointing ahead. My heart sank. I followed his gesture and saw it, a flickering light up ahead. A sign of civilization, or a trap? I had no idea. In that moment, something else emerged from the darkness by the roadside. A figure stood there, partially hidden by the trees. I couldn't make it out. My blood ran cold as a long shadow stretched toward the truck. It seemed to grow larger as we approached, beckoning me forward. Without thinking, I swerved into the other lane, moving past the eerie light. Angling my headlights toward the figure didn't help. It only revealed more shadows, contorting and twisting in unnatural ways. I could hardly breathe. As I glanced back, I couldn't see the dark truck anymore. It vanished into the night as quickly as it had appeared. I felt a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. What was out there? And what had that driver wanted? Adrenaline coursed through me as I made a split-second decision. I couldn't keep driving aimlessly. I needed answers. I spotted a diner up ahead, its neon lights flickering like a beacon. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to talk to someone to ask if they had seen anything odd. Before I could change my mind, I pulled into the parking lot. The diner looked old, with peeling paint and a cracked sign, but at that moment, it felt like safety. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The place was nearly empty, save for a couple of weary truckers nursing cups of coffee. I approached the counter, my eyes darting to the windows, half expecting the darkness to bleed inside. "Hey, you all right?" the waitress asked, concern etched on her face. "I saw something out there," I said, my voice shaky. Someone. A dark truck. She eyed me warily. "You're not the first to mention strange happenings on this road." Then everything went quiet. The air turned heavy as I felt the weight of their stares upon me. That's when I saw the figure again, but this time it was right outside the diner, staring in. I froze. Suddenly, it all became very real. Whatever it was, it hadn't left me behind at all. It had come with me. I backed away from the counter, my heart pounding, The figure outside continued to watch, unmoving like a sentinel of the night. I felt a chill run down my spine as the waitress and the truckers exchanged uneasy glances. "Maybe I should go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The urge to flee surged within me. The waitress stepped closer, her expression shifting from concern to urgency. "You need to stay inside. Whatever you think you saw, it won't stop until you're out of its reach." "What do you mean?" I asked, my breath quickening again. I felt trapped in a web of uncertainty. The walls felt like they were closing in. "People don't just see things on this road," one of the truckers chimed in. "They experience things, bad things." He shifted in his seat, his eyes darting to the window. "Like accidents or worse." A lump formed in my throat. "Worse? Folks going missing," he said, his voice low. "You get chased, you get scared, and then, poof, no trace left behind." A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I thought of the dark truck and the driver's eyes, the way they felt like they were burrowing into my soul. "How do I stop it?" "You can't," the waitress said, shaking her head. "But you can get as far away as you can. Is there someone waiting for you? Family?" I swallowed hard. "No, just me." I had left home for a reason, but now it felt like my past was closing in on me. "Then you need to move before you become another story," she urged. "Trust me." A noise startled me, dull thuds against the diner window. The figure had stepped closer, its features still hidden in shadow. I was suddenly terrified to see what it really looked like. Just then a sharp ring pierced the silence. The diner's phone on the counter started to ring, startling everyone. It was as if the sound had pierced whatever tension was building. The waitress glanced at the phone, then back at me. "I should get that. Stay here." She turned to answer it, leaving me with the hushed truckers and that ever-present figure outside. I glanced at the window, my breath catching. The figure was gone. I strained to look, my anxiety flaring again. Had it moved, or was I imagining it? "Just get out of here," one of the truckers whispered, without taking his eyes off the door. I could see the fear in his gaze. It was enough to ignite my own. "Do you think it's gone?" I asked. Just as I spoke, the bell above the door jangled. My heart dropped as I turned to see the dark figure stepping inside the diner, its face still shrouded in shadow. Everything seemed to freeze. What was this thing? My hands trembled. The waitress hadn't returned yet, and now I was alone with it. I took a step back, desperate to find an escape route, but I knew there was nowhere to hide. It was coming for me. I stood frozen, my mind racing. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. The air in the diner thickened, heavy with dread. I could feel all eyes on it, the truckers huddled together at their booth, their faces pale and grave. I needed to think. Did I take a chance and run? But then I risked walking right into its path. The waitress was still on the phone, oblivious. "Hey!" one of the truckers shouted suddenly. His voice broke through the tension. "What do you want?" The figure halted. It tilted its head slightly, but I still couldn't see its face. There was something unnerving about that stillness, like it was studying us. The other trucker next to him slid to the edge of his seat, whispering harshly, "What are you doing? Don't provoke it." But it was too late. The figure's eyes seemed to glimmer even in the dim light. I sensed a shift in the atmosphere, like a storm brewing. I had to break the spell. "What do you want?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking. It took a slow step forward, and I instinctively took a step back. In that moment I noticed something I hadn't before, a glint at its side, a flash of metal. A knife? My heart raced as panic coursed through me. "Enough!" the trucker yelled, his tone sharper now. "There's no reason for this." The figure stopped, its gaze darting between us. This was the moment, an opportunity to escape. But where could I go? The only exit was right behind the looming threat. Suddenly, the phone rang again. The waitress immediately appeared back at the counter, confusion etched on her face. "What's going on? What happened?" The moment distracted the figure, and it turned slightly, as if reconsidering its approach. The truckers took their chance, rising from their seats in unison, moving toward me. "We need to get out of here," one of them said urgently. The figure's head snapped back to us, its shadowy form tensing. There was no time for hesitation. I shot past the truckers, rushing toward the exit. The bell above the door jingled as I yanked it open. Fresh air hit me like a wave, invigorating and terrifying all at once. But a rain of dread still lingered behind me. I turned to see the others follow, backed by a deep collective breath. We all stood on the pavement staring back at the diner. The figure hadn't followed, but I could still feel its presence within that opaque space. "Did anyone see what it looked like?" I breathed, still gasping for air. The truckers shook their heads, fear etched into their weathered faces. "It doesn't matter. We need to leave," the waitress said, joining us outside, her expression solemn. "It doesn't stop until it gets what it wants." "What does it want?" I asked, my voice small. "I don't know, but we're not sticking around to find out," she said with determination. As we stood there ready to run, I caught sight of a flicker of movement at the diner's window. For a brief second, it looked like a hand pressed against the glass. My heart sank at the thought of what might be watching us from inside. "Go!" the waitress shouted. We turned on our heels, breaking into a sprint as I heard the jingle of the bell fading behind us, and all I could think was, that was just the beginning. The ground was slick beneath my feet as we dashed down the pavement, my breath coming in short gasps. I felt the weight of fear pulling at my chest, making each step more difficult than the last. The two truckers led the way, their heavy boots pounding out a rhythm that matched my racing heart. The waitress stayed close behind, glancing nervously over her shoulder as we tore away from the diner. "Where are we going?" I gasped, struggling to keep up. I wanted to run for miles far away from whatever nightmare that figure was capable of conjuring. "Just away from here," one of the truckers called back, his voice strained. "Get to the truck stop. It's not far." The mention of the truck stop felt like a beacon of safety, but doubt began to creep in. Would we be any safer there? The thought made me hesitate just for a moment. "I've seen too many things on this road," the other trucker shouted, looking back at us. "You don't want to stick around and find out what that thing really is." "Like what?" I blurted out, needing to understand what we were up against. "Stories." He glanced down, tightening his grip on the strap of his duffel bag. "We've all got them. But this one, it's something else." I could feel the adrenaline fading as my mind raced with the implications of his words. What had happened to them? To him? What did he know that I didn't? Just as I was about to ask, we rounded a corner, and the truck stop came into view. Dimly lit and almost haunting, sitting under a blanket of darkness, I stepped into the flickering light, feeling an odd sense of unease wash over me. The parking lot was sparsely populated, just a few trucks idling softly in the night. The diner had been packed with energy, people, and noise. This place felt like a graveyard. "No one's here," the waitress whispered, her voice laced with tension. "We should have more people around." My skin prickled. I wanted to ask why she was so sure about that. What had she experienced out here? Instead, I focused on the task at hand. We needed to get inside. We hurried to the entrance, the truckers flanking me as we slipped into the building. The interior was quiet, save for the hum of the aging fluorescent lights. I felt small in the vast emptiness. The waitress scanned the room with cautious eyes. "Let's get somewhere safe and talk," one of the truckers suggested, leading us to a booth in the far corner. "Stay away from the windows." As I slid into the booth, the memories of the diner flooded back. How that figure had loomed, its presence suffocating. "What do we do now?" I asked, the reality settling in. The truckers exchanged knowing glances, their expressions shifting from fear to resolve. "We need to tell you our stories. It might help you understand what that thing is." Before they could begin, a crack echoed through the silence, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I shot up from my seat. "What was that?" The waitress went pale, her eyes widening. "We aren't alone. Someone's outside." Then everything went dark. I stumbled back, my pulse racing. I could hardly breathe. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered and died, leaving us cloaked in darkness. Only the faintest slivers of moonlight made it through the grimy windows, casting unnerving shadows on the walls. "What happened to the lights?" I whispered, my voice barely above a murmur. The waitress pressed her back against the booth, her eyes darting around as if she could see through the darkness. "It's not just the lights. It's everything. It always happens when it's close." "Close to what?" I asked, but fear knotted my stomach. I already knew. I didn't want to know. One of the truckers, the one who had seemed more nervous, leaned forward. "We need to keep quiet. If it's out there, making noise is the worst thing we can do." His voice was low and tense, as if he believed every word. I grabbed at the edge of the table, my fingers trembling. The very air around us seemed to thicken. I strained to hear outside. I needed to know what was approaching. Minutes passed like hours until I finally heard it, a scraping sound, slow and deliberate. My hair stood on end as I imagined something dragging against the ground. It didn't sound far. The other trucker turned toward his partner. "What do we do? Should we leave?" "No." The waitress cut in sharply, shaking her head. "If we leave, we'll never make it." "What do we do then?" I asked, fear driving my voice up an octave. "Stay still," she replied, still wide-eyed. "And if you're going to scream, save it for when it gets inside." In that moment of restrained chaos, I could hardly focus on what to say or do. I felt the weight of their fear, and it wrapped around me like a cold blanket. I thought back to the strange stories I'd heard from them earlier, snippets that now felt vaguely related to the menace lurking outside. Then I heard it again, this time a soft thud like something heavy landing beside the window. My heart raced, pounding against my chest as the busyness of the diner outside faded into an eerie silence. The waitress leaned in. "It hasn't always been this way. There used to be more of us, but that thing, it keeps them away. You learn not to look when you're driving alone at night. Just keep going. But it doesn't let you forget." "What do you mean?" I pressed, wishing I wasn't asking, but desperate to understand. "The stories, it wants you to hear them," she replied. "Sounds crazy, I know, but it picks its victims. Whatever you feel when it's around, that's how it chooses." Suddenly, the door rattled violently. We all jumped. Everything paused. Breath, heart, time itself. "That's it," one trucker hissed. "It's coming." I felt tears prick at the corner of my eyes, mixing with the tension. What if it was true? What if this thing fed on fear? Then, as if answering my question, something crashed against the entrance, sending a shower of glass fragments spiraling across the floor. That's when I saw it, I thought, my heart sinking. It hadn't just picked the place. It was choosing us. The diner suddenly felt impossibly small. I could barely breathe, the air heavy with dread. The waitress grabbed a salt shaker and clutched it like a weapon. The other truckers exchanged wide-eyed glances, their hands poised as if ready to bolt or fight. The noise outside was unrelenting. Something heavy thumped against the door again, splintering wood along the edges. I pressed my back against the booth, instinctively protecting myself. But where could I hide? A shadow moved past the windows, dark and elongated, slithering in the narrow beam of moonlight. "It's not just out there," the waitress breathed, her voice trembling. "Sometimes it gets inside. We have to be ready." "Ready for what?" I managed to ask, though I already dreaded the answer. She didn't respond, instead focusing on the entrance, eyes filled with an anxious urgency. The truckers stayed quiet, muscles taut as if they were waiting for something to shift. Then came a low growl, so deep it felt like it resonated in my bones. It wasn't like any animal sound I'd ever heard. It was raw and primal. I desperately resisted the urge to look towards the door, fearing that if I did, I would seal my fate. One of the truckers whispered, "No matter what happens, don't make a sound, just listen." Their restraint shocked me. I chanced to glance at them, and in that moment I saw a blankness in their eyes that settled into a deep-seated fear. It was a fear that came from knowing exactly what lurked in the night, feeling its presence crawl along their skin. The force on the door slammed again. It felt like a distant storm that was growing closer. the kind that filled the air with a sense of impending doom. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen in disbelief. Was this my fate? I was a stranger here, caught in a mess I didn't understand. "Stop it!" the waitress shouted, a sudden burst of courage breaking free. She jumped from the booth, spilling salt across the floor. "If you can hear us, just leave. You don't belong here." The world hushed. For a moment I thought maybe it worked. Maybe it would take pity on our small group. Then I heard it, a soft scratching at the edges, like claws against metal. Something was trying to find a way in. I felt the weight of my fear pressing down, intense and suffocating. It clouded my thoughts. I had never realized fear could feel so tangible, so hungry. My mind raced. What should I do? What could I possibly do? And then, as if in response to my question, the door jolted violently, throwing itself open. The shadows spilled in like they were alive, brushing past me. My heart dropped. That's when I saw it, standing in the doorway. It wasn't just a shadow. It was somehow both formless and defined, with eyes that glinted like shards of glass. They pierced into my very core, filling me with an understanding I wished I could forget. "We need to get out," one trucker pleaded, grabbing my arm. "Now," but as we turned to flee, a low rumble echoed from the depths of the darkness. There was no escape. Not this time. I felt my breath hitch as the creature stepped fully into the dim light of the diner. It was larger than I'd imagined, its body dark and swirling like smoke caught in a whirlwind. Those eyes, sharp and focusing on me, sent ice through my veins. I couldn't look away. The trucker who had grabbed my arm started to pull me back, urgency tightening his grip. "We'll find another way out," he insisted, but I could see the panic in his own features. The waitress stood her ground, her salt shaker still raised like a shield, but I could tell she was just as terrified. The growl grew louder, vibrating in my chest. The waitress shouted again, voice trembling, "You need to leave! We don't want you here!" The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head, studying us, letting the growl transform into a slow, unsettling laugh, low and echoing. It didn't sound human. It was a sound born of something otherworldly. In that moment, a flurry of thoughts stormed through my mind. Why didn't we just run out the back? What if the creatures, whatever they were, had taken over the whole area? The world outside felt like a different realm now, a chaotic place separated by the thin glass of the diner, the last sanctuary before whatever nightmare waited beyond. "Get the windows!" the waitress screamed. It snapped me from my daze. Before I registered what I was doing, I dashed toward the nearest window, adrenaline pushing my limbs into a frantic motion. I grappled with the lock as the rattling intensified. The creature stepped forward, menacing and deadly, and I felt time slow. Just as I managed to flip the latch, the glass shattered beside me, showering me with shards. I yelped, stumbling back. I turned to see the creature slink through the opening, its form coiling in on itself, sprawling into the diner like a nightmare made flesh. "Run!" the trucker yelled, and we all stumbled back, seeking shelter against the booths. But chaos erupted as the waitress swung the salt shaker. It shattered against the creature. In an instant, a searing light burst from the salt, spilling over its body. The creature howled, a sound of rage and confusion, backing away from the bright cloud. "What just happened?" I gasped, feeling bewildered. "The salt!" the waitress shouted urgently. "It can't stand it. It's a simple border. We have to push it back." I looked at the truckers and saw resolve. They grabbed condiments, anything with salt, ketchup packets, seasoning shakers, anything to arm themselves. My heart raced. For the first time, I felt the heat of determination rising, pushing through the fear. As the creature snarled and lunged again, we moved as one unit, flinging salt and condiments with all of our might. The laughter began to fade, replaced by shouts of our own. But just as I thought we had a chance, the creature let out a piercing scream that rattled the very walls of the diner. Something shifted in the air. The glass from the windows glimmered with fragments of the moon, and I could sense a deeper danger rising. I noticed an odd glow coming from the back of the diner, drawing my attention away from the chaos. It flickered like a lure, inviting yet ominous. My heart sank. Was there something more behind this creature? What's back there? I whispered to myself, uncertainty creeping in. The creature faltered momentarily, shifting its focus toward the glow. That distraction felt like both a blessing and a curse. Did we have a chance? Or were we about to unleash something far worse? Panic and determination surged in tandem as we fought against the darkness spilling into the diner. My heart thumped wildly as the creature writhed in response to the salt, its form disintegrating at the edges where the light touched it. I joined the truckers and the waitress, hurling every shaker, crumb, and packet I could find, fueled by desperation. "Push it back," the waitress shouted, her eyes wide with resolve. "Don't give it a chance to regroup." We pressed forward, throwing salt like a barrier against an incoming storm. The creature reared back, snarling amidst a cacophony of shattered glass and clattering dishes. I felt the air grow thick with the lingering scent of desperation, mingling with the realization that I was fighting for my life. Then in the midst of our chaos, I saw it flinch as the glow from the back of the diner pulsed again, casting sinister shadows on the walls. "What's back there?" I murmured, my instinct churning with dread and curiosity. The waitress caught my gaze, shaking her head. "Stay focused. That's just a trick. It wants you to look." But the allure of that glow was tempting, urgently drawing my attention. Against my better judgment, I took a step toward it, leaving behind the barrage of salt and fear. "No, don't!" one of the truckers shouted, but the creature seized that moment of insubordination. With a speed that seemed impossible, it lunged forward, claws extended toward me. I barely dodged, scrambling back closer to the others as our makeshift salt barrier faltered. The waitress flung a handful of salt with fierce determination. "We can't let it in. We have to find a way to trap it." Fear surged in my veins as I caught sight of the creature's eyes. Fiery embers of malevolence glinted through the blackness, seeking to consume me. What if that glow is a way out? "A way to stop it," I said, fighting my instinct to back away. "Don't you dare!" she snapped, really grasping my arm as if she knew the lure far too well. "It's a trick. Don't give in to what it wants." A smirk twisted across the creature's distorted features as if it understood our hesitation. I glanced at the windows. The night sky was barely visible past the chaotic flurry of shadows. I felt an urge to flee toward that pulsating glow. "Can we trap it? Can we distract it long enough to escape?" I implored, desperation gnawing at my soul. "We have to hold it here, yes," one of the truckers said, gathering his resolve, but his gaze wandered towards the beckoning glow. "But we must know what's behind it." The waitress stepped back, casting frantic glances between us. "It's a portal, something that moves between our realities. Whatever it is, it uses travelers like a moth to a flame." The creature, sensing our confusion, screeched once again. This time it morphed into an all-encompassing darkness, an invitation, and an unspoken threat. My mind reeled. The diner was no longer just a refuge. It felt like a battlefield, and we were trapped between this malevolent presence and something potentially worse lurking behind that glow. Swallowing hard, I muttered, "We need to create a solid barrier, something to keep it back." "Stack the tables," called the waitress. "Get everything, anything that can help." As we scrambled, the creature continued to probe the edges of our defenses. Every moment felt like an eternity. It swung back and forth, always taunting, always testing our fortitude. In our frenzy, a plastic table broke, scattering across the floor, but we tossed it aside and hastily piled each piece of furniture against the entrance. My hands trembled with adrenaline and fear as the creature began to slip through gaps. But we pressed on, pulling every window and door shut as hard as we could. "It's coming! Move!" shouted a trucker. In our haste to barricade, I almost lost track of the glow, an unwelcome whisper promising safety. What lay behind it? Could it be salvation from everything that pursued me? Or was it another trap? The creature grinned, seeming to sense my distraction. "Give in to the darkness," it hissed in a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "Come to me." A disjointed scream echoed through my thoughts, almost drowning out its taunt. I wanted to turn toward that light, but forced myself to stay with my allies. That bond with the others was strong, woven together by shared terror and whispered bravery. "Are you ready?" the waitress asked, her voice low, steadying my resolve. "We can defeat this thing, but we have to trust each other." "I'm with you," I murmured back, glancing one last time toward the thundering darkness. There was no turning back now. We had to face it together. Suddenly the creature lunged, pushing through our makeshift barricade. We met its onslaught head-on, salt flying in all directions. I didn't know if we could win, but I had to believe we could at least survive the night. With every ounce of my resolve, I threw myself into the fight, focusing on the moment, not the shadows beckoning from behind. Just then that seductive glow flickered one last time. I thought I heard a voice, soft, almost pleading, before a deafening crack split the air, reverberating through the diner. And in that moment, I knew we were fighting not just to live, but to reclaim the pieces of ourselves trapped in the darkness. But as our struggle intensified, I couldn't shake the lingering thought about what awaited us beyond that alluring glow. And who, or what, would emerge. We could never truly know.